So this is another random vlog. The thoughts I was thinking was about, I was just listening to my Afrobeats CD, and I was thinking, how far we've come in our perceptions of Africa. And I remember, like, as a kid, if you were an African, it was kind of like, I don't know, it wasn't a thing of pride, right? So a lot of people had the perception of Africa as sort of like a war-torn continent. It was always poverty. People were always hungry. You had the images of the starving Ethiopians. And it kind of, the Western media, I guess, portrayed Africa as kind of like this basket case that would never ever sort of rise from this sort of this destruction and political instability and economic instability, and I guess when you're from a people that is constantly being portrayed in the media as I don't know, people who just can't help themselves, people who are inherently maybe lazy or inherently not particularly smart, or if those are the sort of images that you're getting of your own people, there's a part of you that wants to disassociate from that. And I remember a lot of people would pretend to be Jamaican, because being Jamaican was kind of cool, right? Because the Jamaicans were always perceived as, they were very strong people who wouldn't take any nonsense, whereas the Africans were very subservient. And because I suppose Jamaicans had Bob Marley as their sort of icon of coolness and political conscience, and I don't know, just it's very cool, a very cool iconic figure, right? Whereas Africans didn't really have anybody, or the only images you really had of Africa, or the perception, or the iconography that you would sort of wrap your African identity around would be, starving Ethiopians. And so in many ways I could, a lot of young Africans did disassociate themselves from Africa by pretending to be Jamaican, right? And and I confess that sometimes if somebody asked me where I was from, I would hesitate before saying I was from Ghana. And when I did say I was from Ghana, sometimes they would mishear me and think that I said Guyana, or maybe because they weren't familiar with the country Ghana, because they were only familiar with Guyana, they would assume that that's what I'd said, which obviously I hadn't. But occasionally I would, not correct them, and in the past I thought it was because of simplicity, but I realized, as I've gotten older, that I was probably doing it because I didn't want them to associate me with starving people, when I went back to Ghana, I suddenly felt this sense of belonging. I knew what it was that I was missing all these years in my heart, because even though I was an African in England, I always felt like I didn't really belong. Like something was missing, like the sense of me and a sense of purpose and a sense of who I came from was missing, even though I knew, unlike a lot of African Americans who don't know which African country they're from, I knew which African country I was from. But because you're kind of living this dual identity of an African and a European, as a teenager it's kind of confusing. As a young person it's confusing, and your identity, and I suppose when you're young and you're trying to find out who you are, your identity is shaped by so many things, and trying to coherently piece that together and say that this is who I am as a young person is quite difficult. And so when I finally went to Ghana, I was like, gosh, I came from these people. I came from these people who, these people of Kwame Nkrumah and, W.E.B. Du Bois and, all these other Pan-Africanists who fought so valiantly, lost their lives for me to be free and for me to, know who I am, to know that, I am emancipated mentally and, and physically. Those people that came before me, and I thought to myself, gosh, I can't believe that I allowed myself to be sort of brainwashed by Western media into thinking that I was not from a people that I should be proud of, you know. And I've just sort of, well, not just recently, but, you know, come to that conclusion that, you know, the media is so damaging to us, you know, and to me as individuals in so many ways, you know. And I'm so glad that now, you know, we're seeing the sort of you know, take pride in yourself as an African movement. You know, you get lots of African events, you'll get you know, you've got lots of African artists, you know, who are teaching kids that you're cool. You know, it's not just the Jamaicans may have Bob Marley, but we have, you know, R2Bs and Two-Face Adigba and, you know, all these other people, you know, Wizkid, you know, that show you that you can be cool, you know. Because it's a lot of the time, you know, how you perceive yourself is shaped by, you know, the people that you see as your icons, and that's usually like musicians or artists or, you know, those kind of people. And, you know, I'm so glad now that that movement towards taking pride in yourself as an African, no matter where you're living in the diaspora, is coming through. And I just wondered, you know, from your experiences, what your experience was like as an African. Did you struggle to find your identity in, you know, in a foreign country? Did you always have pride in yourself as an African, or is this, you know, is it recent that you've developed this pride? You know, because unfortunately for me, or maybe for, I don't know, it's probably unfortunately I would say, my parents were not they kind of just wanted me to assimilate, and I think that they didn't realize the impact of me not having a strong African identity on how I perceived myself. And, you know, I'm not sure if, you know, any of you have parents who sort of like stamped you know, the African identity on you in a way that prevented you from feeling, you know, like you weren't tethered to a particular culture, you know. And I'm not sure if it's a particularly Ghanaian phenomenon, because, you know, I tend to find that my Nigerian friends are very Nigerian. You know, they know that they're Nigerian, you know, they're proud of their Nigerian roots, and, you know, there's never any sense of, you know, pretending to be a Jamaican. You're like, never that. And I think it was mostly that sort of pretending to be a Jamaican happened among other African races rather than necessarily Nigerian. So I just wonder, like, you know, what your experiences were when you were growing up, of trying to find who you were as an African within, you know, a non-African society. So discuss. Let's make that an essay topic. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, just let me know your thoughts. All right, I shall see you later. Bye.